Let's take a look at titles, tokens, and project info. I've just set up a new project and thrown a couple of scales in. By default, there's this project title and these flow titles. If you double-click on either of these in write mode, you'll see what Dorico calls tokens, dummy text that gets automatically replaced with project information, or project info for short. If you click on the File menu, or its Command-I or Control-I on Windows, you'll get this project info dialog. This is all text information you can store behind the scenes, and then you can tell Dorico to bring it onto the page as and when you need it. And there's a copy button down here, which will allow you to copy the info from one flow to another, or from the flow to the project, or vice versa. But also, if you want to set the same information for multiple flows, you can grab them on the left, then type the information once, apply, and it'll set it for all of them. Sometimes I might want to put something in here that reminds me when a project was last revised, for instance, and not put it on the page at all. It doesn't really matter which of these fields you use for this kind of thing, as long as you know where they're going to show up on the page. If I switch into engrave mode and click on this first master page, it'll open in the master page editor, and the next tutorial goes into more detail on this. You'll see that for scores, it's the project title, lyricist, if there is one, and composer, and also copyright down here at the bottom. The flow heading, where it says 1 flow 1 or 2 flow 2, is separate to the master page, which is a kind of template, so that's a separate flow heading editor, again if you're using Dorico Pro. And then if I switch to the default master page, that's the one that's used after the first page by default, that just shows the page number and the flow title. Obviously this is a left version of the page and a right version. The part layouts use a slightly different set of master pages, which include the layout name. And if you switch back to setup mode, you can adjust this from the right panel. By default, it's just whatever the instrument's called, or full score, but you can double-click on them and type whatever you like. While I'm here, let me say there's a one-way relationship between the flow name, down here, and the flow title in project info. Behind the scenes, they're actually two different objects, but there's only a token for the flow title. So if you only ever double-click and type into this flow panel, both the flow name on the left of project info and the flow title on the right get updated automatically. But if you type into the flow title on the right and apply, it won't update the flow name. So again, this can be useful for keeping track of revision dates. You can store them in the flows panel, knowing that they're not going to affect the actual printed title. Back in write mode, you can double-click on this stuff and type over it, and if you double-click and then right-click, you'll get a handy list of tokens, some from project info, but also some other useful bits and pieces. I could type D major scale, say. But I have to emphasize that when you edit this kind of text within write mode, not in the master page editor, it's doing two potentially bad things. Firstly, it's editing just this one page, so if I switch to the score, you'll see it hasn't changed here. And two, it's creating what's called a page override. When you do this, because you've overridden the page, Dorico's going to leave it overridden. Most of the time this isn't a problem, but if I decide to double up this scale so it takes two systems, it's not going to move this flow heading until I remove the override, which you can't actually do in SE or Elements. Now in Pro, that's no problem. You go to engrave mode. The red corner up here indicates this page is overridden, so select the page and click this Remove Overrides button. I lose my edited text, but Dorico will rethink where to put that flow heading. So if you're in Elements or SE, you're mostly stuck with this kind of layout. You may want to lose the flow headings, or to adjust whether each flow starts on the same page or starts a new page, and you can do both of these things in layout options. If you go New Flows Always Start New Page, that'll split the flows out to separate pages, like this. And you can also turn off flow headings entirely, if you like, or not for the first flow. And you could set this so that each flow at the top of a page uses the first master page, which can be useful. But if you want to tweak the text that shows up at the top and bottom of the page, you're best off sticking with title, composer, lyricist, and copyright. and your best bet is to edit it in project info.